Renee Miller with the Augmentation of Man series. Today we're going to talk about the soul's box.
This.
The safe box.
Yeah, the soul's box is
Well, it has
something
something to do
different.
with the soul. Yeah, but anyhow, the safe box. Why we all look for a safe place for our decisions and arguments.
And what we're willing to look at. This is the real crux of, when we're on our journey to finding truth, what is it that we are willing to look at,
Well,
and what keeps us from looking at the whole picture?
Humans present the positive, basically to hide the negative.
And that was
Reading
our guide's word, who said that we have a difficult time looking at the negative or acknowledging that which we might feel is negative within us.
Yeah,
and
so
a lot of it is just perception.
Yeah, when we look at one side, we have an internal conflict of, I believe in this, but I can't say this because it'll interfere with our friends or our acquaintances' thoughts. So you create an internal negative within yourself.
I think there's a lot of reasons why we do that, including, what makes us feel uncomfortable. And we're going to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, what creates the definition of positive and negative versus universal definition?
So the human definition of positive and negative really relates to our perceptions and how it makes us feel. So positive outcomes are things that we like and make us feel good. Negative outcomes are generally outcomes that we don't like and thus make us feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, or puts us in a direction in which we don't want to go.
That's right. So, positive can be truly positive if we're moving in the right direction. But we're talking mostly about perception here, right?
Yeah, well, we're raised, our environment, our friends around us, different things that influence what we consider positive or negative.
Yeah. But see, the human definition is different from the universal definition, in that the universe looks at positive and negative as positive is all about the learning and expanding of universal consciousness, versus the negative is the opposite of that. So it's anything that inhibits the expansion of consciousness. And so a negative entity would be one, either physical or non-physical, that is skewing information, who's muddying the picture, who's getting us to look in another direction, and who is hiding the truth to some degree.
Yeah, so when we have what we call as humans a negative experience, it doesn't figure in the factor of learning. No matter how painful it is, and usually it is painful, that's why we call it negative, that we don't get a greater understanding of why it took place, the reasoning behind it.
That's right. And so universally, they talk about positive and negative. Really, it goes back to our learning and our ability to learn. Also, I want to interject this, and when they talk about universally, when they talk about positive and negative energies, they are talking about ionic balance. So a positive charge to the ion field or negative charge, and the balance between the two. So again, the human definition of positive and negative energies is different than the universal definition.
A negative event or negative energy is something if we have an event we don't know anything about, then we consider it negative. Because if we have a stunning revelation all of a sudden of an event, we consider that a negative event because we know nothing about it. And people that...
Because it takes us by surprise.
Right, it takes us by surprise. And when you know nothing about an event, you call it negative.
Because it kind of sneaks up on you. You're not expecting it, and it's a sudden awakening that can be startling, and therefore it's perceived as negative.
Yeah. So when somebody tells the truth about something they have in a truthful event, we consider it negative because, whoa, we never heard of that before.
Mm-hmm.
See? So that's why it's so difficult in discussing the truth from the non-truth, because we don't know who's telling the truth and who's telling a non-truth.
Because it's all just
Mixed
variations of gray, and everybody, not everybody, but those in charge have an agenda. So
well, even
all
those
of
that are not in
consciousness
charge
is being
develop
controlled.
an agenda of their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
So
is what it is.
We live in an experiential learning field where there has been almost a complete control of consciousness by various entities, various groups, and most of them are human, although it's not entirely limited to the human field. No. They seek to control the narrative and what others believe for various reasons and outcomes that benefit themselves or their promotion of an ideal or a narrative for an outcome that they desire.
Well, do we feel that we don't know entities outside this earth, even though there are entities outside of Earth? Do they try to control their narrative to the point that we don't know if they're telling you truth or non-truth?
We ourselves have, we're continuously in meditation. When we speak of meditation, we are continuously having to filter information to make sure that we are not being misguided, because it does happen.
Yeah, but controlling the narrative gives one power.
That's right. And also it keeps us by sending us off in a wrong direction or down the rabbit hole, so to speak. It gets us off of our path so that we are not sharing information. So that's another reason why we would be influenced to the negative.
Yeah, we've experienced over the years that women prefer to only find out the positive points of an event, where men really don't care to some extent either way. Why is women so influenced? I only want to know the positive. I don't want to know the negative, except fear.
It's fear-based. And it's fear. What our guides have said is fear of what they don't understand. And it's a highest order of fear. So the behavior was developed as a child. It was acceptable, that behavior was acceptable, so that they didn't, quote, look at the boogie, or they didn't have to look at the boogeyman in the closet.
So are you trying to appease the older ones around you with thinking positive or acting positive?
I think it's a behavioral pattern that develops and continues through to adulthood. And it's based in fear, so that you don't want to face that which makes you feel fearful. And so what happens is it continues into adulthood as a pattern of behavior. And then that avoidance of looking at that side that makes you, or that subject that makes you feel uncomfortable, prevents you from looking at and seeing and accepting the entire picture of what makes up a truth of that event.
In this negative adoption of what most females go by, is that a false filter?
Filler. Well, the guide in this lesson has told us that when you fail to look at the entire picture, you're only looking at one side of it, and that causes the person to have to fill in the gaps with false fillers. So then you develop a false narrative, and it is not aligned to complete truth.
Well, the males look more like a survival type species where they like to protect the family, protect their surroundings. They try to balance their understanding and within their own sphere. And females are saying, okay, I don't want to see certain aspects of what you do because it goes against their own grain of what they believe, which is love, sincerity, etc. So it is a balance in a way of the two opposites. But there are unbalances in partnerships throughout the world. And so what we have to do is try to understand what is balanced, what is unbalanced. And it's very difficult.
Between the male and female, each represent different types of energy, but together it's a completeness. And so the male is more about that egotistical expression, self-preservation, survival, taking care of the family, that sort of thing, providing for the family, where the female is more about that softness and the love and non-egotistical type of behavior. And we're speaking in general terms, but the two are complementary and provide the balance that especially children need to learn.
Yeah, so the male or the female can look at various events in an angulation, looking at different angles of the event. And it doesn't mean that one can outdo the other in figuring out or understanding the event. Just they both have to go through the angles of the event to understand it.
So by us talking, for example, then you see things from certain angles, I see things from certain angles, but together, if we can listen to each other and open our scope of view, then we can see a bigger picture.
There's the thing right there. We can listen to each other, and that's the key, listening.
And so as far as the male is concerned, the mentor has said that men can be boxed in too in their understanding because of the work of protecting the family makes it more difficult to find that softer side and to be able to look at that softer side. But the woman can help the male to be able to see that.
Yeah, that males of the past, but what about males of today? I hear that males aren't really males so much. They have lost their masculinity to the female.
Okay, so this is all a different lesson, but you brought it up. The mentors have, in looking down on humanity, see that the male has migrated away from the intentional genetic expression of a male, which is that hardness, the egotistical behavior, the being able to survive and provide for the family. You have to go through
me to get to my family type.
Right. Aspect. And so for the female genetically is encoded to be able to provide the opposite balance of that. And so in recent times, these the outside entities are looking down on humanity and saying, we've kind of reverse roles lately, and we're not aligned to the true genetic character of this incarnation when we reverse roles. And so our genetic identity is much more than what we are, we understand as a humanity, because we're learning about vibrational expression. The male being the male is the negative pole and the female is the positive pole. And together we're interacting and in a way that is vibrationally attuned to our physical genetic self. And in response to each other, we are vibrationally learning about those genetic expressions and how it implies to our daily lives in this physical
Yeah,
expression.
so that's a good explanation. But okay, today, now, and every day, the last few years, and what's coming, why is politics so divisive? Neither party, neither people, neither sides of humanity are looking at the other side. They said, "No, I've got this side, and I believe in this, and I'm not going to even listen to what you have to say." That is so divisive.
And not only that, but that when we are polarized to one side or the other, then it prohibits us from looking at the larger
So we
picture.
don't learn.
So we're not learning, we're only seeing part of the picture. So when we identify with a political party, I kind of lean toward this team mentality in this, drawing a parallel to our polarization politically. And that is, if you ascribe to a political party, you are rooting for your party, and your party is the one who's going to win, whereas the other party is no good.
It's like you're rooting for a baseball team or a football team or a hockey team. You don't want to see the other side even raise its head, let alone score. And your side is always in the right. No matter what happens, it's always in the right, which creates imbalance, imperfection, and no learning.
Yeah, and so just think about how much we could accomplish if the two sides actually came together. It cannot be done, though, when we are so extremely polarized. And so
that's becoming a conceptual learning when we come together and be able to talk. We learn conceptual, we become conceptual beings when we have conceptual learning.
So when we are able to meet in the middle, this is where the goal is here, is to come to the middle. And this is speaking of politically, because we won't have such a wide gap that separates us, that keeps us eternally in a system of never getting anything done. But it also, when we're talking about looking at the bigger picture and finding the truth, is that when we come to the middle where we're neutral and we can look at both sides, even things that make us feel uncomfortable, then we can start to piece together the data points, the information that we have gathered, and connect the dots so that we can see the bigger picture.
Yeah. Now, doing all this at once is very difficult. It's going to take time. It's going to take time if you begin to try to take the neutral point of view, because you have been in a
state of
box.
polarity. Well, a state of polarity too. But and you're so hiding yourself in a box, right, so that you can't see a bigger picture.
So you've got to begin pulling yourself out of this box, this safe box that you're in, and beginning to stand back and see the whole forest. Don't let that tree in front of you keep you from seeing the whole forest. Okay? You've got to back away from and begin looking. Now, it's not going to happen all at once. It's not going to happen in 2 days, a week, a month, or several months, but it will eventually happen where you will see all aspects of an event taking place, and it'll awaken you tremendously.
And really, if you are searching for your own enlightenment and you are searching for your awakening, you have to start looking at how polarized you might be. And
that's a difficult thing, because that means, say, oh, I've been wrong or I've been right, whatever.
Yeah,
but say, whoa, I'm going to look at things a little differently when you start to research what you've been thinking.
And I think, for myself, in trying to migrate to the middle and consciously make that decision to become neutral, my own barometer inside says that when I am presented with information, when I instantly react inside, I'm polarized. If I'm watching something on TV and my first reaction is to turn it off, I might be polarized. So we can look at how we feel inside, and if it is causing us anxiety listening to it, and it causes an instant reaction, we are exhibiting polarization.
Yeah.
And when we are neutral, we don't have that kind of reaction inside, and instead there's a calmness that exists.
Yeah.
And that can be your gauge.
Don't try to argue with the person.
Yeah,
don't try to argue with the person that's polarized. You cannot win. What you have to do if you want to discuss something with someone who is trying to become unpolarized, it creates advantages that you can put your hand on and say, yeah, okay, we come to a middle of what we have here. And that's what's important, to come to a middle. But somebody who is extremely polarized, you're not going to come to a middle.
Where we want to get to as a society is to be able to come to the table of social discourse and to be able to discuss the many issues that present society today.
Now, this sounds great, but it takes a lot of work.
It does, and it's a lot of inner work, and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years to try to migrate to a neutral position. But when we can come to the table of social discourse and be able to listen to each other with open minds without the reactionary mode going on inside of us, and try to see the bigger picture, it is only then that we will be able to fix the problems that exist in our world today.
For those that accuse you of doing something that you didn't do, it's just going to take a lot more work to become unpolarized, because they'll throw you right back into your safe box of polarization. So with that, I would like to
say, just have to, when that happens, you have to understand where that person is, that it is their polarization, and not let it affect you and your balance.
Yeah. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us, and hopefully you'll start on your path right away, but it'll take time. The longer you wait, the older you get, and the harder it is to become unpolarized.
You're talking about an old dog and new tricks. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and as always, peace be with you on your journey to enlightenment.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.